my fellow Americans.
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting? Just a moment.
I'm not defending him in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually, the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across, which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plan in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding disinformation? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect, it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
And it might sound radical, colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done, and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this office, what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
You would know this this is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth, and that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over a cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email. And all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
You killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed 1 million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war
George,
after
if
what
I
you've
was
already
still in
done.
Parliament,
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be on the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean with the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone, or to take the nation to war partway, or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip, because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of, you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, They get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran."
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show, but if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, one of the 4 principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist, you will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories. For example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Time, and then pull them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe. But his cover story, you see, would be that he'd gotten them from his stringer in Lusaka, who had gotten them from the Zambia Time. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists, Reuters and AFP, the management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was, and we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbunda women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort of totally false propaganda.
The only reason that I'm allowed to ask you this question is because today the federal court ruled that the government doesn't have the right to determine who is or is not a journalist. This is the second election in a row that the court had to overturn your government. Do you still insist on being able to make that decision, and why?
First of all, questions around accreditation were handled by the press gallery and the consortium of networks who have strong perspectives on quality journalism and the important information that is shared with Canadians. The reality is organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted on this Tuesday. I'm Clayton.
I'm Natalie.
No, nice. I was going to say, so good to see you, and then I conflated so nice to see you. I don't know what I was going to say. So good to see you. So nice to see you. And then I said, no. Okay. I just said, no.
All right, you pipe down over there, and I'll take it from here.
Good to see you.
You're watching Redacted. This is the show where we take on the stories that the mainstream... What is happening?
I don't know. Anyway, good to see everyone. Welcome in. Yeah,
it's chaos here. Are you drinking vodka?
I should be, but no. David, literally, Michael Yon just dialed in. I hear Michael Yon in my head. David's dialing in. I'm losing my mind, but good to see everyone.
All right. Tonight. I have my wits about me for now, so good. I will welcome our audience and guests. Thank you for joining us. We are going to concentrate.
We will?
Shortly.
Yeah.
Yes. We are going to do that.
We've been concentrating all day because we got a ton of stories to cover for you today. Holy smokes. Bill Gates, the EU going nuts, George Soros, all tied together in one big Bill Gates, George Soros EU sandwich. And it makes a lot of sense because the EU is one of the most corrupt organizations in the world. And they're teaming up with Bill Gates to block out the sun. This sounds like a brilliant idea to cool the earth by blocking out the sun. No, it could lead to widespread famine and total destruction, which we'll dive into.
Okay, can't wait. We're also going to talk about the conflict between Poland and Ukraine that continues to ratchet up. Plus, Pfizer was asked what they know about their vaccine association with myocarditis. They act like they have never been asked this question. They do not understand. The very notion of the question was enough to just make them sort of have a brain freeze the way Clayton did at the beginning of this show. We're going to talk about that, plus increasing proof of censorship from the Biden administration in social media. Yeah. You are here right now. We are allowed to talk. We're going to talk while it is still allowed. We are going to think while it's still allowed. Redacted starts right now. All right, there's a bug, like one of those little no-see-ums there. I don't know if you can see that.
No, and I can't see it. That's why they're called no-see-ums.
It's only buzzing around Clayton right now. And
what's going on tonight?
It's hilarious because Clayton likes to sleep with the windows open, and the bugs only bite me at night. So I wake up itching. He's sawing logs, and right now the bugs seem to be exacting their revenge. So I am enjoying that. Thank you for watching Redacted. We're so glad to... Gross. You go wash your hands. I'll go off and I will get the show started.
I Mr. Miyagi that guy. I'm not.
But that's gross. You have a dead bug on your hand. Can you just run off and literally there's another one now in your hair.
All right, let's focus. Yes, we have there's another one coming in here. What the hell's happening tonight?
I don't know.
It's like a crazy night. But
you're like Pigpen. Did you take a shower?
In fact, I just took a shower for the first time in a few days. No, I'm just kidding. I did shower, but I don't know what's going on. Anyway, good to see everyone. Let us know where you're joining us from tonight around the world. It's like, it must be so crazy, sticky hot in the studio. Maybe that's why they've all the bugs have migrated into the studio today. I don't know what's going on.
It is quite hot where we are.
Philip is back, our technical director who was away in Las Vegas, winning a pool tournament. He's one of the best pool players in the world. And he was away for a number of days at a big international pool tournament. So, and you won a couple of matches, right?
Yeah, I won most of mine. I did lose my last one, but it was, in my defense, it was 10:30 at night, and I had been playing since 9 a.m. So I did eventually lose, but I won the other ones.
Well, screw that guy. We're glad that you.
Yeah.
We're glad that you're back, and Grim did a great job filling in, but we're glad to always have your insight as well. Grim will go back to only fiercely texting us his opinions, but if he wants to ring in with his microphone on, that's fine too. You also can ring in by either sending us a super chat, pushing like, sending us something on Twitter. We always like to engage with you. Another way that we engage with you is through our newsletter. That's a daily newsletter, Monday through Thursday. It's totally free. All you have to do is go to redacted.inc and put in your email address, and then you can authenticate that email, and then we're off to the races. We We send you this news every single day, and it is a compendium of the stories that we do here, so you can get links to those stories yourself. You can read up before you get to the show. You can read it later if you'd like and see if you agree with our analysis. I'm just one of those who really, really tries to make sure that you have the opportunity to read these things for yourself instead of relying on what you're told from anybody, not just us. There's more to the newsletter than just the 4 or 5 stories we do every day here, though. And again, it's totally free. It's a great way for us to stay in contact with you, and it's a great way for you to just keep up on the daily news and keep an archive of stories that continue to change. Very much so. They continue to change.
That's right. So you go to redacted.inc. That's the website to sign up for that. Yeah, as they want to force us to eat bugs, I'm killing them here in the studio right now. I'm killing them. That's what people say.
You're very fierce.
We need to get one of those ultraviolet bug zapper things.
We have one of those, but it's, downstairs.
Yeah, we need to do that.
So anyway, I'm not for violence, but when
it comes to killing bugs,
they enact their violence on me first. Look at this right here. I wake up just itching like crazy. So anyway, I try and deal with that in a non-violent way, but at some point, you're the victim or the victor.
All right, let's get into the news, shall we? Well, the European Union. Well, sorry, I'm hearing myself back.
That was David.
Oh, David. Well, the European Union, along with Bill Gates and George Soros, have a plan to block out the sun. Yes, lower the Earth's temperatures by launching chemicals into space that would block out the sun. What could possibly go wrong? Well, we'll get to their plan in a moment. But first, you might have picked up a newspaper lately that told you the Earth is boiling. That's the headline across multiple newspapers. It's so hot that if you bring a glass of water outside, it will boil in your hands, apparently. That's what boiling is, right? So clearly that'll happen. Here's the Daily Mail picking up on this boiling headline, the impact of global boiling. So you won't see global warming anymore. You'll just see global boiling. And they're talking about Greenland, specifically the ice sheet melting there during the hottest month ever recorded on Earth. Of course, we only recorded it for 150 years. I don't know if newsflash, the Earth is a lot older than we started recording shit, FYI. Just in case any of those scientists are keeping track, it goes back millions of years, maybe even billions of years. How old's the Earth? Does anyone know? Let us know. It's certainly older than the 150 or so years that we've been tracking how hot the Earth is. Pictures of wildfires and newspapers also making headlines are all the fault, apparently, of global boiling. There's never been a wildfire in history before, the history of this planet, until global warming came along, apparently. Wildfires didn't exist. I don't know if you know that. There's never been a fire on Earth that caused a forest to catch on fire until global warming hit a few years ago. People in Italy are so hot that they're jumping into the Trevi Fountain just to cool off. You might have seen a number of these headlines. Oh my God, it's so hot that people are seeking refuge in the Trevi Fountain and other fountains across Italy because, there's fountains all over Italy. Here's, it's pandemonium. It's never been this hot. Here's, Instagram. Women that normally pose for Instagram photos without props are being forced to hold fans in their hands. We are literally dying. This is what's happening. People are dying, and they're being forced to hold fans in their hands. It's pandemonium. It's never been this hot before. The head of the United Nations, Guterres, says, forget global warming. It's now the era of global boiling.
Climate change is here. It is terrifying. And it is just the beginning. The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived.
Okay, so now just FYI, say goodbye to global warming. It's now global boiling. That's the new marching orders. They're telling us that the Earth is so hot that it's boiling beneath our feet and we need to act right now. It's an emergency. Didn't you see the king? He just rolled out his entire new doomsday clock just a few days ago in England, right? It's so hot we need to act right now. Enter Bill Gates to save us all. And George Soros, who funded a plan to block out the sun using aerosols sprayed from airplanes and injected using high-altitude balloons with these giant sprayers. Think chemtrails. You block out the sun. You drop the Earth's temperature just like a volcanic eruption. Saudi Arabia, of course, already doing this, using these sprayers for cloud seeding in order to try to get it to rain. But now think of it on a global scale.
Israel also does cloud seeding.
Yeah, a number of countries, right? Israel, Saudi Arabia. This is not, I'm sure the United States in parts are using it.
The United States did it in Vietnam in order to flood out enemy trails.
Right. Yeah. So, and multiple countries are using this already on a smaller scale, using cloud seeding projects to try to get it to rain. But now imagine using it to block out the sun with particulates that'll stay up there for months at a time.
Isn't that why we were told we can't use aerosol hairspray?
I think so, right? Wasn't that the whole point? It's causing a hole in the ozone layer.
Well,
totally different story. But
this would be like the opposite of that, though. This would be the opposite of a hole in the ozone. This would be making like a super ozone, basically, like blocking out the sun.
A double layer of ozone, exactly, because it's in the stratosphere. This is their whole plan. So this is exactly they want to do this now on a global scale. The EU, Bill Gates, George Soros, they want to do this. And this is exactly what the EU is planning to do. Watch this report from CBS on blocking out the sun. They are doing like a deep dive promotion of this video. They're doing like a deep dive promotion of this entire plan. Just look how they're sort of jolly about talking about it. Watch.
What exactly is solar geoengineering?
A set of proposed technologies to rapidly cool the Earth by reflecting sunlight back into space.
The idea is based on the cooling effect of volcanic eruptions. When Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines erupted in 1991, it spewed 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the sky. That reflected so much sunlight, global temperatures dropped by an entire degree the following year.
So one notion is that we could mimic those volcanic eruptions by sending specially equipped airplanes into the stratosphere to do exactly the same thing.
Okay, great. That's great. That's the
You know
idea.
what I think of when I hear these guys doing stuff like this?
Dr. Evil?
Oppenheimer. I don't know if you guys,
I haven't seen it yet. No, I haven't seen it yet.
Well, there's one part where they're talking about like this could ignite every atom in the universe. We're just not sure. It could. We're going to take that chance. But and the guy's like, wait, you mean there's a chance it could destroy humanity? And they're like, well,
let's try it,
I guess.
Shouldn't everyone get a vote?
So you're telling me there's a chance? Would you ever marry me? Would you ever go out with me? Not for one in a million. So you're telling me there's a chance?
That's a Dumb and Dumber movie quote he just butchered.
Totally butchered it. Do you ever feel like yourself going down that trail of like quoting something? You do it all the time with idioms, so you know exactly. Like where you try to,
And
like
then you're
an
like,
apple
"That's not
away keeps the goat away. What is that? I know it, and you can't say it. Anyway, so CBS is in on this.
To blave.
So CBS is in on it, doing a deep dive promotion of this whole idea of this volcanic eruption, not even questioning the devastation of this prolonged aerosols in the atmosphere due to volcanic eruptions. They're not journalists. They're parroting the pseudoscience behind this. And it's madness, actually. Someone who did do a deep dive on this are the co-authors, Nicholas and William Klingman, authors of the book, The Year Without Summer, 1816 and the Volcano That Darkened the World and Changed History. Now, I read this book a few weeks ago because I wanted to understand more about how devastating it would be to block out the sun. Once I started hearing them talk more and more about this blocking out the sun, this book sort of fell in my lap. And it really speaks about the historical record of the summer of 1816. So here's a little history for you. And hopefully these people on CBS will pay attention to this, and maybe Bill Gates will pay attention to this. You see, the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia in the year 1815 triggered a change in the global climate, a massive change. The heavier material fell to the ground, the ocean's surface. But the aerosol particles devastated crops around the world, caused massive famine, wiped out populations, led to the slaughtering of livestock because they had no food to feed the livestock. Snow and frost hitting farms and fields in July, months after this eruption. At the time, they couldn't figure out what the heck was causing it. They didn't know. They didn't even have telegraph lines at the time. Everyone from John Adams to Thomas Jefferson to Jane Austen wrote about it in their diaries and correspondence. Incredibly cold and abnormal summer of 1816, and tens of thousands of people died as a result of starvation due to the famine. In May of 1816 alone, the frost killed off most of the crops. Higher elevations like Massachusetts and New Hampshire and Vermont, as well as upstate New York, couldn't plant anything. On June 6th, snow fell in Albany, New York, and in Dennisville, Maine, and Cape May, New Jersey. Snow, frost, in the middle of summer. 5 nights in a row in late June. All sorts of crops damaged. And according to the authors, the volcano only caused the global temperatures to decrease by less than 1 degree Celsius. Less than 1 degree. Caused the global famine and population decline. Then we saw the exact same thing happen in the early 1900s. And again, after the explosion of the atomic bombs, caused similar atmospheric particles that blocked out the sun for months at a time. So let's watch this again. And watch him smiling here as they talk about replicating the effects of a volcano. Like, it's going to be fun.
What exactly is solar geoengineering?
A set of proposed technologies to rapidly cool the Earth by reflecting sunlight back into space.
The idea is based on the cooling effect of volcanic eruptions. When Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines erupted in 1991, it spewed 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the sky. That reflected so much sunlight, global temperatures dropped by an entire degree the following year.
So one notion is that we could mimic those volcanic eruptions by sending specially equipped airplanes into the stratosphere to do exactly the same thing.
Oh, we could mimic those volcanic eruptions. Like, this will be fun.
Can you think of any reasons we shouldn't do that? Is maybe the follow-up question that the journalist doesn't ask.
Hey, what if that journalist said, hey, I just read this book on the summer of 1816. I just watched Redacted and I saw that they were talking about it. And it turns out there was widespread death and famine, caused global population decline, just absolute destruction of crops, and set economies into total ruin. Hey, what about that? Well, I haven't seen that book. I don't know that research. Well, maybe you should look into it. But what about the boiling argument that's being floated around by the United Nations Secretary General and newspapers around the world? Is that true? Are we boiling right now? Is Greenland melting? Turns out it's based on out-of-date, old data. The Earth is not boiling. In fact, it comes from a computer model based on decades-old data. These so-called scientists refuse to use the new data that was published in 2020. Instead, they keep using the old, out-of-date data from 2010, 13 years ago. If they did use the new data, they would see that the Earth's temperature has dropped slightly, and Greenland's melting of ice actually went in the reverse. There's more ice in Greenland now, and they gained ice there. But don't let the facts get in the way. As long as women in Rome are stripping down and jumping in fountains in the middle of August, newspapers will continue to tell us that the Earth is boiling.
I mean, what are a fountain for? You know?
I mean, if I'm going to go to a fountain, that's what I would want to see.
Sure.
I don't really care about the Gothic stone carvings.
Okay.
I'd like to see it. I'd like to see that. That'd be better. I'd be more happy. But I saw a dog jump into a fountain, and they were trying to get a dog out of the fountain in Italy, and it was running around in circles, and people couldn't get it out. That's funny.
Sure.
I enjoyed that. Someone in the chat gave us a super chat a few minutes ago, said the movie Snowpiercer, or is it a movie or a television show, Snowpiercer?
It's a movie.
It's a movie. Okay, Chris Evans, I guess. Apparently that's how it starts out. There's like a global ice age as a result of trying to block out the sun.
Yeah, I mean, you can name so many movies where the environment is totally messed up because of scientific manipulation. WALL-E, The Matrix, that Tom Cruise.
Highlander 2.
Yeah, but a lot of those movies they they say, it's like humans that did all this trash building up in WALL-E and did it all ourselves. Not like it's intentional, right? Like WALL-E wasn't intentional, but this is intentional. As someone just said in the chat, in our Rumble chat, said, Clayton, you nailed it. You said population control, population decline is what they want. I think that's absolutely the case.
It sure
that they
seems
want
like
that. Seems perfect, right? There's a lot of themes around population control and population decline by having, getting rid of meat, blocking out the sun, southern border invasion tonight in tonight's show. I think it's all interrelated. So thanks, Bill Gates.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us know what you think about that, what your thoughts are on the very prospect of, and the point of that story is that the European Union has decided to come up with a framework to consider this seriously, legitimately. Bloomberg saw the documents and they said, yes, they are coming up with an idea of like, how are we going to go forward with this? Because they do intend, at the very least, they're going to study it. Whether or not they do it or not, I don't know. Maybe that's up to us to say, hey, we don't want that in our ecosystem.
Yeah. Blue Eyes.
I feel like they're just I was gonna say, I feel like they're playing dystopia bingo with us. They're like, which dystopia do you want? Do you want like where nobody can afford to live, or how about we just block out the sun? We can go with that one, or atomic annihilation. Like we've just got all of them on the table right now. We can do any of our multiple.
Well, the nuclear option is perfect because what the authors in this book talk about is the nuclear. What they weren't able to figure out in the early 1800s exactly what was causing this widespread chaos, right? Mm-hmm. Because they didn't have telegraph lines, they didn't know, and then a couple of decades later, they had another eruption, and they were able to figure out like, whoa, seems like this is actually causing it. They didn't have full confirmation of the aerosols in the atmosphere and what was causing it, and the only way they were similarly able to reproduce it was because of the nuclear age and when all the nuclear testing. So they had a similar level of particulates and aerosols that were blocking out the sun during the nuclear testing and after the atomic bombs were dropped. And so we saw similar catastrophe. So, hey, that's why I don't think they would mind using nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Like, hey, well, good. You know what that'll do? That'll lower the Earth's temperature, and then we can have a population decline. They would absolutely love that.
Yeah.
In our chat, Old Blue Eyes says, if you want, always agree with Clayton if you want a shout out in the chat room. That's true.
I guess that worked. This other super chat here said that in Lithuania, they had an ice storm. Click on that one.
Which one?
The yellow one at the top.
Oh, there was a hailstorm.
There was a hailstorm of big ice lumps in Lithuania a few days ago, and it's August.
There's a snowstorm happening in the high elevations right now of Italy. I saw it's one of the like coldest temperatures they've had in the higher elevations of Italy right now. Yeah, sorry, this bug is driving me nuts.
I don't think that's the same one. There's just a few of them that maybe just hatched and decided to come in
right
on our show.
Right at the start of our show.
I know.
And no, it is not true. Like if a lot of times when I disagree with you is when I'll call you out in the chat. So that's not exactly true.
Yeah, call him crazy and he's coming after you. So
no, I love it. I love when you.
All right.
I have very thick skin.
We're going to move on. We're going to talk about Poland and Ukraine having a tiff. We're also going to talk about these Pfizer hearings where Pfizer seems utterly perplexed by being asked and also can't believe that someone would dare ask them about myocarditis. Plus more evidence that the Biden administration and the FBI are working with social media to censor us and want to keep doing that. A big hearing about that's coming up on Thursday. So we got to pay attention to that, you guys. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Bank on Yourself, because you know how the Wall Street gurus say to max out your 401k and your IRA? Mostly that means put money in those devices so you can partner with the government to invest in Wall Street. In fact, even the man who invented the 401k called it a failed experiment that should be destroyed. It's time for you to get the truth, because if you really do the math on the 401k, it's not that exciting of a savings plan for when you are at full retirement. Most people have about $90,000 in there to live their whole life on, and then it's taxed. So are you being lied to about these investment vehicles? Of course, but there is a better way. Bank on Yourself is there to help grow and protect your hard-earned money. This retirement plan alternative has never had a losing year in over 160 years. It is guaranteed predictable growth in retirement income. With Bank on Yourself, your plan doesn't go backwards when the markets tumble. Your principal and your growth are locked in, and this is tax-free retirement income. You know what your tax rate will be when you retire at zero under current tax law, which protects you from the coming tax tsunami, plus just peace of mind. You know that the minimum guaranteed value of your retirement savings on the day you plan to tap into them and at every point along the way. There's no like hoping that when you retire, the market is good. You know, that's kind of a game that a lot of people play with their retirement. Like, oh, I hope I retire in an up economy. So do you want guaranteed predictable annual growth, control of your money, and tax-free retirement income? Then go to bankonyourself.com/redacted and we'll send you a free report with the proven retirement plan alternative that banks and Wall Streets are desperately hoping you never hear about. So check it out. Just go to bankonyourself.com/redacted for your free report. One more time, that's bankonyourself.com/redacted.
Well, Vladimir Putin just issued a stern warning to Poland. Don't even think about invading Ukraine to take over the western part of the country now that Ukraine has turned into a graveyard and Zelensky is losing favor with the West. What will happen to Ukraine once this is all over with? In recent weeks, rumors have been circulating that the Poles would love to move into Belarus and into Western Poland to annex that part of the country. Zelensky has been calling for cooler heads to prevail. Please don't invade Ukraine. Let's settle these tensions down a bit. So what is happening in Poland right now to piss off Putin so much? Let's find out, because we've got an important day where the president of Poland just announced parliamentary elections for October. Mike Krupa is a Polish journalist and historian, host of Votum TV. He's been covering this story deeply. He joins us today from Poland. What is happening in Poland, Mike? We got parliamentary elections coming up now in October. So a lot of moving pieces here. Does Poland want to invade Ukraine, want to invade Belarus?
Well, hello, everybody. Hello, Clayton. It's great to be back. First of all, from my perspective, the way I'm seeing it in Poland, I'm sort of fine-tuned into the insides of Polish politics, especially the more conservative opposition side. Now, I know there's a lot of internet talk and rumors circulating that Poland does want to do an intervention in Ukraine and Belarus. In my opinion, that's not going to happen before October 15th. Now, you mentioned at the beginning of the program that the Polish president, literally just a few minutes ago, Andrzej Duda, announced on Twitter that he has called for the elections to take place on October 15th. That's a Sunday. So now we can take that as a signal that, okay, so they want to quickly do the election so they could enter Ukraine after October 15th. But even then, I would not say that they would do anything rash before October 15th. Now, you might have heard that there has been a little skirmish along the border between Poland and Belarus. Last week, it was discovered, by the way, by local residents of a town near the Polish-Belarusian border, that a few Belarusian helicopters actually entered Polish airspace. So that was an illegal intervention, obviously. The Belarusian side is saying nothing of the sorts happened. And there has been a growing sort of fear-mongering campaign in Poland, whereby the government is claiming that the Wagner Group, which is currently relocated in its 8,000 people structure to Belarus, is going to somehow invade Poland. So I'm taking this as part of the election campaign, a lot of fear-mongering. I don't understand how 8,000 people can, execute a full-fledged invasion of Poland, as they say.
Right.
But the rumors that are out there about Poland going into Belarus and going into Ukraine, I don't find anything substantial from the sources that I'm hearing. I think the warnings that came from Putin in the Kremlin and during that famous discussion he had with Lukashenko a few days back were a warning in and of itself, basically, that they might be hearing rumors coming from intel sources in Poland that this might have been discussed, but I'm not seeing anything active as of this point. I don't think any sane person in Poland, even the pro-Ukrainian opposition in Poland and the pro-Ukrainian government, with the exception of the one-party confederation, are actually telling the public that we're even thinking of entering Belarus or Ukraine, which is a good thing in and of itself.
Now, you say this before the October 15th election, right? I mean, so Putin wouldn't issue this order if there wasn't something that they were actively watching, right? And I agree with you. The idea that the Wagner Group is going to invade Poland, a NATO country, 8,000 forces into a NATO country would be insanity. With the United States military bases there, it would be absolute nuts. But of course, that's exactly what Putin is saying in reverse, right? You're a NATO country. You're going to invade Ukraine. That will not stand. So Ukraine looks like it's going to become a battleground. I mean, in terms of NATO powers beyond what it currently is, no?
It seems that way. There's also been, apart from the Belarus angle, there has been a spat also between the Polish government and the Ukrainian government a few days ago. As a matter of fact, there was a report in a major Polish news outlet a few days before this took place, whereby the advisors of Poland's most powerful political leader, that is Jarosław Kaczyński, who is the head of the Law and Justice Party. Apparently, a few of his advisors were telling him, you know what, I think we should tone down the pro-Ukrainian angle because the opposition party Confederation, which is a conglomerate of sort of libertarian nationalists and Catholic traditionalists, has really come out hard against this, very pro-Ukrainian stance that Warsaw currently is representing. And they told Kaczyński, we got to tone down the rhetoric and talk more about a Poland first platform. So all of a sudden, we've seen a change of tune on the part of the government whereby they're saying, by the way, Ukrainians, I think you should be more grateful for what we've been giving you. And Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, Marcin Przydacz, this was 2 weeks ago, he wrote on Twitter that for all that Poland has done for Kiev, we expect a little bit more gratitude. And the response from Kiev was they actually called the Polish ambassador into the Ukrainian foreign ministry. They gave him a smack down. Then there was a response in Warsaw where the Polish foreign ministry called in the Ukrainian ambassador, and they went at it. So officially, there's a little fight going on between Poland and Ukraine because the Ukrainians are not happy that Poland wants to block Ukrainian grain from entering the Polish market, which would basically kill our farmers. And just a reminder, most of the Polish farmers, as of today, vote for the governing party. So the governing party knows where its support comes from. It comes from the province. It comes from the farmers in many ways. So on an official line, right now, as we speak, there is tension between Poland and Ukraine, not to mention tension between Poland and Belarus. So that's something unexpected to a lot of people. Although I would hesitate to say if this is really genuine, because if you look at what the current government has done since February 24, 2022, the amount of subservient services, basically, that we've given to Ukraine, including military equipment, the billions of Polish zlotys that have went there, the mercenaries that were allowed to go to Ukraine and die en masse. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of things we don't know about. I find it hard to believe that this is a genuine opposition to what's happening in Kiev. It may seem like Zelensky wants to prolong the life of this government by allowing them to sound very patriotic and Poland first, but only, as you said, until October 15th. So currently, I'm not so much convinced that this is a real fight, although it does seem that the substance of the fight is genuine, because if we allow the Ukrainian grain to come into Poland and other European markets, we're going to be swamped and our farmers are going to be having a hell of a tough time.
I want to ask you about these elections. So you've got the ear of the people on the street there in Poland. What are they saying now? We've covered here before, of course, the massive amount of Ukrainian refugees that have poured into Poland, into the millions. And I don't know what the current number is. You can give us that current number, but I think it was millions at the time. Have a lot of those refugees gone back to Ukraine, or are they still in Poland? And how does that shift the election landscape?
The majority of the Ukrainians that came into Poland after February 24th, they're still in Poland. Now, if you add that to the Ukrainians that were already here before the war, which was about 1.5 or around 2 million, I would guess in Poland right now, my rough estimate would be that we have around 4 million Ukrainians in Poland that we can account for. I'm not talking about the illegals that are here, but I'm guessing it's around, some people are saying, let's say 3.5 to 4 million. That would be a rough number. And I think a pretty exact number. But right now, we can see Ukraine fatigue in the Polish electorate. That's for sure. That's why you're seeing the change of tune coming from the government. Now, they woke up fairly late to the party, so to say, because up until now, anybody who was voicing a different opinion on the Ukrainian-Russian war and Ukrainian-Polish relations as they are constituted right now in relation to that war was called, a Russian agent, a Putin stooge, pushing Kremlin talking points and all that. But all of a sudden, the government is coming out and saying, hey, we have to put Poland first. They actually put a hashtag. All the government officials, the ministers, they put a hashtag, Poland first, that we have to take a tough stance against Ukraine and we'll always put our interests first. It's like, okay, guys, where were you since February 24, 2022? So there is Ukraine fatigue. If you were to talk to any typical Polish voter on the street and asking, for example, should we continue the help? Should we bring in, another million Ukrainian refugees into Poland? Every single one of them will tell you no. And obviously they would say no to any sort of Polish military incursion into either Belarus and especially Ukraine. Now, how that will transpire into votes is anybody's guess, although the main sort of mostly genuine oppositionist party to the war from the beginning, which is Confederation Party, especially one MP, one Grzegorz Braun. They've risen in the polls recently. Some are saying they're somewhere around 14 to 16%, which would give them about 60 MPs after the election. And that would create a situation where Law and Justice, even if it wins the elections, they're not going to have a majority. They're going to have to talk to Confederation about consolidating a coalition government. So we'll see where that goes. But one thing can be said for sure. All the polls are showing Ukraine fatigue in Poland. All the polls are showing that the level of support for bringing in Ukrainians and Ukrainian immigrants has gone way down from about 80% to just lower than 50%. And there's definitely no hunger and no appetite for any Polish military incursion into the war. So thankfully, public opinion is opening its eyes. I'm afraid it might be a little bit too late for many things. But, as they say, better late than never.
All right. So, well, just bottom line, we'll get you out of here on this, Mike. What do you think happens after October 15th? If there's no invasion of Ukraine before that time, there's no invasion or incursion into Belarus before that time, the election comes and goes. What happens after October? Is there still this appetite? As you know, there's the phrase in Poland, and forgive me if I'm butchering this, the phrase in Poland is Poland from sea to sea, a popular phrase in Poland for those who wish to sort of extend from the Baltic Sea all the way to the Black Sea. Is that really on the table?
No, that's mostly historical mythology. Now, obviously, the Polish kingdom once ruled from sea to sea. That was back in the 17th and 16th centuries, but those days are long gone, and nobody that's sane wants to bring those days back. It's just like, Vladimir Putin, I think it was in 2005, said that anybody who doesn't miss the Soviet Union doesn't have a heart, but anybody who wants to rebuild the Soviet Union doesn't have a brain. So we're thinking in the same terms here in Poland, at least the rational people. My scenario for the elections is as follows. I think Law and Justice, the current party, unless some sort of, huge scandal explodes or some, some tapes come out, for example, or some scandal is brought to the public fore, I think they're going to win the election. They're not going to win them with a majority. They're going to win them slightly, and they're going to have to take up talks probably with Confederation or the Peasant Party to create a coalition government. Now, in my opinion, because of the diverging tendencies in those two parties, that'll only be a technical government up until some point. And as of today, I would predict that within a year and a half, max 2, we're going to have another round of parliamentary elections in Poland. And those ones are going to be the more consequential ones. Because right now, in the war situation, I don't think peace is going to do anything rash, as I said before, October 15th. But the numbers are simply not there for them anymore to win a majority as they did in 2015. And in 2029. So I'm predicting 90% chance there's going to be a coalition government, and the coalition government will most likely be with the Confederation Party. But just to end off, there are two factions in the Confederation Party. One wants to do a deal with peace, and they're obviously gunning for it. Peace is obviously law and justice. And the other one, the more hardcore one, the more realist one, which I mentioned, Grzegorz Braun, doesn't want to do any coalition with law and justice. They want to take out law and justice for the evil that they perceive it has done to Poland in the last couple of years, including being a subservient client of the Biden regime as it relates to the Ukraine war. So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Fascinating. Very important country. In this entire geopolitical landscape right now, especially in the Ukraine war and what's happening there. Thank you so much, Mike. Great to see you as always. Great insight. Fantastic insight. Thank you so much, Mike. We really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, guys. Hope to see you soon. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much, Mike. Really appreciate it. Great analysis, as always, out of Poland. See a lot of people in our chat saying Poland. Justus says Poland from sea to sea will cease to exist after 1 week with Russia. And let's see. What else do we have? Some Poland questions here. Anyway, let us know your thoughts on that in the comments below. If you were going to say something there. No?
You were reading something. And
I was reading something and the screen went black. And then so I was trying to say something. But anyway, good to see all of you guys. Welcome. And please subscribe to the channel if you're new here. It would be great if you could subscribe. It's totally free. If you do, your name will pop up on the big board behind us here. You can do that on Rumble and on YouTube as well. Free speech platform over on Rumble, by the way. And
while it's still allowed, wait till you get to the story. In a minute, we're going to talk about how the government continues to censor Facebook, has been censoring Facebook, has been lying about doing that, and wants to be able to keep doing that. This is a case we're continuing to follow, the case of the attorneys generals in Missouri and Louisiana that are saying the Biden administration censored speech around the pandemic, and the Justice Department saying, yes, and can we please keep doing that?
That's right. We're also going to check in with Michael Yon at the southern border because Massachusetts just declared a state of emergency over illegal immigration. Yes, Massachusetts, which is a sanctuary state, just declared a state of emergency over illegal immigration pouring across the southern border. So the Biden administration, of course, tells us that, everything's fine at the southern border. Secretary Department of Homeland Security Mayorkas says, yeah, it's fine. We've got a plan for it. It's all good. Don't worry about it. And yet we've seen record number of border crossings in June, record number of border crossings in July. Michael Yana is going to be joining us because they've outfitted this giant truck with $500,000 worth of equipment. They have a team. They're going from one end of the border to the other, and going to be tracking and under the cloak of darkness. And members of Congress are coming to meet up with Michael and the team so they can show members of Congress what exactly is happening at the southern border that no one wants to cover and no one wants to do anything about, apparently, in the United States. So we'll get to that story. And yes, there's a big Peruvian UFO story that's just breaking. And I'm all over it, and I'm very fascinated about it. And there's film footage of these 7-foot large creatures that have attacked a Peruvian village. And it's stunning, and there's all sorts of interesting sides. So I see a bunch of people saying, Clayton, what about the Peruvian story? Yes, I'm watching it, working on getting a guest on that for tomorrow's show. Very, very interesting. So we will bring that to you tomorrow if we can round up some good footage and get you the details on it. But first, if you're a business, and you are humming along, and then suddenly you're falling behind. If your team was suddenly buried in manual work and it's taken forever to get the work done that you need for your business, getting the books closed, all of that stuff, just slowing you down. That's where NetSuite comes in. And with NetSuite, you can download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist. Key performance indicators are incredibly important for a business. And you can get them downloaded right now just to give you a consistently excellent performance with your business. You can download their KPI checklist by going to netsuite.com/redacted to get your own KPI checklist. I mean, what's amazing is you've got a number of issues right now with businesses trying to get to a certain size, and you start to see all sorts of cracks emerging. How do you measure these things? How do you know all of your different employees and what they're supposed to be doing at any given time? And then setting out goals and trying to reach those goals. It's incredibly important. And you should know these three numbers: 36,025.1. 36,000, that's the number of business which has upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. And then 25, that's NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down costs. And 1, because your business is one of a kind. So you get a customized solution for all of your KPIs, your key performance indicators, in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need all in one place. So right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist designed to give you consistently excellent performance, absolutely free, totally free. Just go to netsuite.com/redacted. That's netsuite.com/redacted to get your own KPI checklist. Again, that's netsuite.com/redacted.
All right. Well, Pfizer doesn't know why its vaccines carry the risk of myocarditis. This became painfully apparent in recent hearings in Australia. We're about to show you this video from Senator Gerard Rennick, who had the platform to ask Pfizer these most direct questions. These are the most direct questions we've ever seen anybody ask them in an official way to their face. The media certainly won't do it. Now, this video is a bit over 3 minutes long, but it's worth watching in its entirety for 2 reasons. And let's just kind of mark these things. Number 1, how they really just do not have an answer and lack of curiosity about the risks of the COVID vaccine, and continue to just say, well, we made a calculation, we made a risk-benefit calculation, we're going to stick with that. And also how they are just used to being able to dodge this question, with their gobbledygook. Watch.
And can you explain the process why the vaccine causes myocarditis and pericarditis?
I'll take that, Dr. Hewitt. Sure. Based on our clinical trials and pharmacovigilance data, as well as real-world evidence following the distribution now of billions of doses of vaccine, we retain confidence, strong confidence in the safety profile of the vaccine.
Sorry, Chair, point of order. I've asked, do you understand why it causes, I know that it's a low risk, I'm asking, do you understand why it causes myocarditis? I want you to explain to me why it causes myocarditis. Do you understand why it causes myocarditis?
Pfizer is aware of very rare reports of myocarditis and pericarditis that have been temporarily associated with vaccination.
Well, that's still ongoing for some people.
Senator Reddick, Dr. Through should answer the question. Thank you, Dr. Through.
According to public health experts and regulatory authorities around the globe, the number of reports of myocarditis remains small.
I'm not referring to the number of reports. I want you to explain to me the mechanism of how the vaccine causes myocarditis. Do you or do you not understand the mechanism of why the vaccine causes myocarditis? It looks to me like you don't. And if you don't understand it, why are you saying the vaccine is safe without qualifying the risks?
So, Senator Reddick, I think Dr. Through is actually about to get to that point. Whether people agree, whether there's agreement to his evidence or not, is another question for others to make a judgment on. But if Dr. Through, if you could again go to Senator Reddick's question.
Senator, all medicines, all therapeutic products and vaccines have benefits and have side effects as well. Looking at the totality of the evidence for Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine, regulatory authorities, health authorities, experts globally, including in Australia within the Department of Health and the TGA, have maintained that the benefit-risk ratio...
That's not the question that I asked. I asked, can you explain why the vaccine causes myocarditis? Yes or no?
Senator, the benefit-risk profile...
Yes or no? So you clearly don't understand the pathway, do you? Because you can't explain it. I'm not referring to the cost-benefit analysis here. I'm referring to, do you understand the biochemical pathway as to why the vaccine causes damage to the heart?
Senator, I'm happy to take your question on notice and come back to the committee with whatever information we can provide. I might just clarify, I was not referring to a cost-benefit analysis in my previous response. I was referring to the benefit-risk ratio, and health authorities around the globe continue to recommend the benefits.
This isn't the question that I'm asking. Anyway, thanks, Chair.
Can I just so I'm clarify as well, Dr. Through, you've agreed to give further, take the question on notice and give further response to that question. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair. As I understand, the question was about the mechanisms, and we're happy to take that question on notice.
Doctor.
Okay.
So we'll get back to you.
Right. So we should absolutely follow up on whether or not they come back with it. I would have liked to have heard, well, we're looking into it, or we have some hypothesis, or we also want to know that, and we may, whatever. They were just kind of like, no, I don't know anything about that, as if it's a brand new question. And now Senator Rennick here acknowledges, sorry.
I would have loved to have heard him answer it truthfully and be like, I would rather not tell you. We know, but I would rather not have to say it out loud.
Right.
Because they know.
Well, I mean, and if he's under oath, right, he could have said that, right? He doesn't want to be legally liable for it. He could be like, yeah, I don't want to tell you that because could cause me some harm.
Well, he didn't say he didn't know. Or did he say that? Did he say, I'm unaware and I'll get back to you?
I don't think he said he didn't know. I don't think he said he didn't know.
He said, I'll get back to you.
No, he didn't say... Yeah, he just said, I'll get back to you. He didn't say, I don't know. Because, they know. He just doesn't want to say.
He's got to know.
It's like that to me, that's what, they know.
Pete Soromoto in our Rumble chat says it's genocide and they're getting away with it.
He, at the very least, has an educated hypothesis and can speak to that. If he were to be more candid, they would have some kind of hypothesis. And we're going to get to a hypothesis in a second. Now, Senator Rennick acknowledged that the risk of myocarditis is low, although recent studies would refute that. We showed you this just a few weeks ago from the Department of Cardiology and Cardiovascular Research Institute in Basel, Switzerland. They found that 1 in 5 doses of the Moderna booster resulted in myocarditis. That's not a low risk. But this hearing that we just showed you was about Pfizer. We are going to get to Moderna in a second. But surely there's a similar phenomenon happening if both carry a risk of this one immune response. Shouldn't Big Pharma be super curious? Shouldn't he say, yes, we're working on that, or I'd like to wait until those studies are completed? Or, I can present you with a few hypotheses, and this is what the problem is, if he said, we have these working theories and we're testing them, they'd say, well, are you going to change it They would say no, because they're not motivated to change it. And I'm going to show you why in a second. Now, here's what fellow YouTuber and Rumbler and health expert John Campbell says is actually the current hypothesis about this myocarditis link.
These lipid nanoparticles carrying the ribonucleic acid are injected into the arm. And we know that the systemic distribution of these lipid nanoparticles, now when the systemic distribution, that means they go all around the body. So these lipid nanoparticles are going to go through the blood vessels in the myocardium, through the coronary arteries, through the coronary capillaries and drained by the coronary venules. It's going to circulate through the heart. Now, these vessels in the heart are lined by a vascular endothelium, living cells. So there's no reason why the lipid nanoparticles won't join up with these cell membranes in the vascular endothelium in the myocardium and the RNA going into those cells. Now, what the RNA does is it hijacks the cells or takes over the cell's protein-producing apparatus. And then the RNA will cause these cells in the vascular endothelium to excrete this foreign synthesized spike protein onto their surface. So you'll now have cells inside the coronary arteries with this foreign spike protein sitting on the surface of it. And as a result of that, there'll be an immune response, an inflammatory immune response. The body's immune cells will come along and say, heck, that's not supposed to be there. Let's make an immune response to it. And sometimes the T cytotoxic cells will say, well, let's destroy that cell, thereby causing inflammation in the heart. Now, I think that mechanism does occur. But of course, you've probably realised already that if the systemic distribution, this will be applying to everywhere, not just the heart. And that is probably true. So why are we so aware of the myocarditis and pericarditis side effects? Well, I think there's two factors here. One is that if the heart does stop working, it tends to become fairly obvious within a few seconds. The person would lose consciousness. Cardiac arrest situation if the heart did stop working. The other one is we can measure troponins. These are a readily available, commonly tested for cardiac marker. That allows us to monitor the level of heart damage. So when we see raised troponins, we can correlate that with the myocardial damage because it's a myocardial damage marker. The same could well be happening in a range of other organs. It's just that it's harder to see. The effects could be longer lasting or more deferred, and the markers maybe not quite so readily available. So that's one explanation. I'm a bit surprised those guys didn't seem to know about that.
Yeah, you think? I mean, I don't want to minimize John Campbell, but why does a YouTuber have a better explanation than Pfizer at a Senate hearing? It should be the other way around, right? He takes this question seriously, whereas Pfizer does not, and came unprepared to discuss this at all. Period. Now, watch Senator Rennick ask Moderna representatives if they would reinvest some of their profit that they made from the vaccine to vaccine injury. And what they tell them basically is, well, the government gave us this sweetheart deal. It really should be the government that's working on that. We don't have to. So basically, they're saying we don't really have to give you good answers to these questions. Because we were given full immunity, we were given this job as a government contractor. We don't really have to secure it. And so that's kind of on you. Watch.
So what percentage of profits does Moderna plough back into helping people who are injured by the vaccine?
Thank you. I was going to say we're aware that there is sort of an indemnity for COVID-19 suppliers, but indemnities are a policy matter for government to decide. I can't comment.
So Moderna doesn't put any of its profits back into helping the victims of injuries from the Moderna vaccine, is that correct?
So Moderna is a company that's focused on manufacturing vaccines. The matter of indemnity for vaccine suppliers is a matter for government.
So you're not prepared to underwrite the risk of your own vaccine. You're not prepared to actually put money where your mouth is when it comes to the safety of your vaccine. Is that correct?
So just before you answer this question, Senator Rennick, I'll have to go to Senator Antic after this answer is given.
That's just the last question there.
Back to you.
Just yes or no, you're not prepared to underwrite the safety of your own vaccine?
We take safety of our vaccines very seriously, We have a very good pharmacovigilance process in place, in fact, a comprehensive one. However, I would only reiterate that indemnities are a matter for policymakers.
But what about a moral, social conscience of putting some of your profits back in helping victims of the vaccine? Zero? Is it $0?
I might just before you again, Dr. Leong, just before you answer that, I appreciate.
Well, it's just that she's not answering,
No, I respect you asking the questions. I just want to make sure we can get to Senator Antic and keep to our timetable. But
I'll just take that as a zero.
Okay. Now, again, why should they? That was sort of what she's saying is like, well, you gave us this indemnity. You're the one who, you know, like
United
you,
States
the government, right? Any government. She could say that to really any Western government.
Yeah. No.
Basically, like that sounds like a you problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. We brought forth these things that didn't really work, and you gave us full blanket immunity and indemnity that you would never be able to sue us, or we'd never be in trouble for it. So, frankly, why am I even here answering your questions right now, Senator? I shouldn't even have to answer your questions.
Yeah.
You literally, you gave us the ability to walk all over us, or we gave you the ability for us to walk all over you. Although there were a couple of countries that said, no, we're not going to give you blanket indemnity. David, what was it? Was it Bolivia? Bolivia. And there are a couple of other countries. There are a couple of African countries that said, no. We're not just going to give you blanket indemnity. And they refused to sell their vaccines to them.
Right.
Which, I guess good for those people.
Now, why did the government do this? Why does the government continue to be the mouthpiece for Big Pharma? We honestly don't know, and it's becoming increasingly clear that the government just can't back up the things that it asked us to do. We see this in lawsuits in Canada. Now we see this in a lawsuit brought by a watchdog group called the Functional Government Initiative just this week. The suit was brought last year, and in the suit, the group asked for any documents that provided any scientific support relied on by Health Secretary Xavier Becerra when approving or issuing the tweet recommending that all Americans receive a booster shot every 2 months. So that would be 6 COVID shots per year. He said online, if it's been more than 2 months since your last booster, you should get another one. And so they said, okay, this is conflicting information. It seems the government is just ratcheting up the number of shots that they're asking people to take. So how did you come up with that? In response, the government handed over 1,263 pages of documents. None of them, not in one page of those documents, was there any scientific support to say to Americans to get a booster every 2 months. None of it. So he, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the health secretary, was able to say this on an official platform on Twitter that everyone should get a booster every 2 months with no scientific basis. Here's how that went in court. The official from the Department of Health and Human Services said the department reviewed all of these pages. After careful records, we determined they were not relevant to their request. They couldn't find anything. Now, a spokesperson for the FGI, this group that brought the suit, says the lack of a single record supporting Secretary Becerra's bold public health recommendations for 6 COVID boosters a year is a startling development. It is tremendously irresponsible for the government's chief health official to fire off tweets recommending frequent injections of a new vaccine booster, apparently based on no academic or scientific support. How can the public be assured that the agency is following the science or other important public health matters when it demonstrates such clear disregard for basic scientific integrity? Now, it's interesting because this follow the science, right? We're going to talk in a second, just how much the government censored people on Twitter for saying things that they said were not based on the science, saying things that were critical of the science, saying things that were critical of the vaccine, saying things that promoted vaccine hesitancy. But this effing guy, right, can just go out and say whatever he wants, and there's no consequence. There's no one there saying this is misinformation. No one marking this tweet saying there's no scientific basis behind getting 6 COVID shots a year. Nothing. There's just this one watchdog group filing a lawsuit, and that's it. So it would seem that lawmakers and drug companies were never following any science. They were just doing what they wanted and then telling us to follow the science, which was whatever they wanted to do. So this becomes increasingly clear. Let us know what you think of this in the chat.
Yeah, these people are killers. These people are killers and they're liars. Daniel Martinez in our chat says they do not want to say the reason why because the mechanism is related to the mRNA delivery method. In all likelihood, they will shift the blame to the spike protein in order to misdirect from the mRNA.
Yeah.
Interesting point. Thank you for that super chat. Yeah, let us know your thoughts on this in the chat below. They can bring these guys on in front of these Senate hearings, but unless they have like prosecutorial ability, what's going to happen here? Unless they can recommend criminal charges like they're trying to do with Fauci, like Rand Paul is trying to do with Fauci. But these guys are, they've got this blanket immunity.
Yeah, that sucks. So this may be, I see in the chat, people are saying we need Nuremberg trials. This may be as close as we're going to get to it, and it's disparate. So it's a little in the European Union, a little in Australia, very little in the United States. Some lawsuits in Canada. The government doesn't seem to have an appetite there after looking into Justin Trudeau's emergency powers over vaccine mandates and saying that was cool. We may not get exactly that. So we have to, take the crumbs that we're given, pick them up and say, okay, at least we know some of us weren't crazy. That was some bullshit.
Well, and let's not forget the fact that they're still pushing this shit. Right. Yes. As we head into the fall and into flu season, like they're still pushing this stuff.
Right.
So, and they can't answer for it. And and the public health campaign and of course, mainstream media is totally silent on it. All of those doctors, those pseudo doctors who've been on with the Health Watch segments on CBS and NBC and all these guys that were pushing this stuff. Mm-hmm. Where are their segments now warning people against taking it? I don't see any segments like that.
No.
I don't see any politicians apologizing. I've seen one Canadian politician apologize. There might have been one politician from Denmark that apologized for COVID, for the vaccines.
I believe there was an English politician.
Maybe that's it. That's it on all of this. Unbelievable.
Right.
Anyway, let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. We've got more news to get to. Michael Yana is going to be joining us from the southern border as they go and launch this 5-week-long journey across the border to capture on camera what is actually happening because everyone else is out to lunch and not focusing on it. And more Facebook files. Congressman Jim Jordan out with some new Facebook files showing how cozy the FBI was with Facebook and how they lied about it. The FBI has a long track record of lying. All of that and more as the show continues. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Moomoo. Are you an investor looking for an easier way to trade stocks? And would you like 16 free stocks? That's a great question. Would you like 16 free stocks? Of course you would. And with our friends over at Moomoo, by the way, they just launched in Canada. So now you can get your Moomoo app up in Canada if you'd like. Plus you get a $100 gift card when you open your account there in Canada. But even if you're not in Canada, you can still open the account and get up to 16 free stocks just for opening the account. And you get the additional benefit of having customizable watch lists, advanced charting capabilities. And now with Moomoo, you've even added a whole new powerful earnings calendar. So you can track your favorite companies and see when they're posting earnings and how good it is or how bad it is. I don't know if you guys saw Beyond Meat. Do you see Beyond Meat went down the toilet today or over their earnings? Awful. People are apparently actually want meat. And Beyond Meat, which is like fake meat, their earnings, they were down 31%. The share price plummeted like 31%. They're having to lay off like a fifth of their staff. Really, really brutal results for Beyond Meat. But if you had those alerts set up, and you were like you were an investor in Beyond Meat, you could have set up alerts to see what their earnings were like. And you could say, oh my God, I'm jumping ship on this stock. What's crazy? Anyway, go to redacted.inc/Moomoo today to get up to 16 free stocks and trade like a pro with Moomoo. Again, redacted.inc/Moomoo. Get up to 16 free stocks when you open your account and make your initial deposits in your account.
Okay, well, more Facebook files show that the Biden administration was indeed working with social media, and so was the FBI, and the FBI lied about it when asked in testimony. And they think people in Arkansas are really stupid, and they don't know not to believe everything on the internet, and so this is their civil duty to protect you from your own stupidity, especially if you live in Arkansas. They literally called out Arkansas in this one correspondence we're going to show you later, where the government said, Yeah, but like, how do we prevent people in Arkansas from knowing not to believe what they see on Facebook? It's really condescending, you guys. So now I want to point out the FBI is allowed to lie to people, but they are not supposed to lie in depositions. Like the FBI comes to your house, they can tell you lies. They're allowed. Maybe we should put a pin on that and say that's not for the public betterment, that this one organization is allowed to lie. But okay, let's set that aside for a second. Now, this all comes from another round of information from the House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan, who continues to show how the Biden administration has been reaching into Facebook and controlling speech and conversations and suppressing stories even before he was president. The campaign did this. This week, they show that the FBI lied when asked about meeting with Facebook and Twitter. Here's that deposition from San Francisco FBI agent Elvis Chan when he was deposed for the Missouri case against government censorship. In that deposition, he was asked if he'd been present for meetings with Facebook and Twitter when they were told, hey, this Hunter Biden laptop story is coming out. It's fake. Don't publish it, downrank it, all of that stuff. When they warned, as Mark Zuckerberg told us when he spoke to, who did he tell? He told Joe Rogan, that he had been warned about this. When Elvis Chan was asked, were you in those meetings? He unequivocally said, no, he wasn't. And that he was very confident that he was not in any meetings with social media companies. Well, Facebook handed over evidence to the contrary. Here is evidence, internal communication from Facebook from someone saying that they followed up with Agent Chan after he was in that meeting. Here they're asking for guidance as to whether or not the FBI knows that the Hunter Biden story is foreign influence, which we know it was not, but it was super easy to call it Russian disinformation. It never was. It was true. We also know that this was a lie from the Twitter files because we saw this exact same thing. So if we were to compare like screenshots side by side, we would see that they did pretty much the exact same thing at Twitter that they did at Facebook. We have not heard about YouTube, but we can surmise that that happened as well. I am very interested, Representative Jim Jordan, in the YouTube files. Please let that be next, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be a carbon copy. There is also evidence that the FBI collectively decided to say no comment on the Hunter Biden story when asked if it was legitimate, even though they knew it was legitimate because they had possession of the laptop at the time. At the time that this is all happening, this is from testimony of Laura Demlow. She's the section chief of the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, saying, when did the FBI decide to come up with this no comment? Who said that? Why did they say this about social media? And she says, you see the last line here, I can say there were internal deliberations with a number of parties, but I can't go further. So she's saying that the FBI had meetings. They know for sure that the Hunter Biden laptop is legitimate and decide to tell everybody no comment. That's a lie, right? Essentially, that's a lie. No comment. It's not really a lie, but they are purposely not admitting a truth to the American public. Is this the same as they're allowed to lie to a person or a defendant or a target or what have you, as lying to the entire American public? I think we should collectively think about that. Representative Jordan says that the Biden administration has stonewalled the committee's efforts to interview Agent Chan for obvious reasons, because he can't go repeating the things that he said in that deposition for the Attorney General case, because those things have since been disproven with all of this publicly available information on Twitter and Facebook files, right?
As someone in our chat says, yes, a lie by omission. Hopeful Faith 69.
I mean,
and this is
does that hold water in a court of law? If, did you purposely mislead the American people about the Hunter Biden case by saying no comment? I don't know. I don't want to discuss jurisprudence. It's not giving us the truth that we deserve.
But this is what Tucker's been saying for the past couple of months, right after he was forced out of Fox. He's been talking about the lies through omission, right? No one punishes you for telling lies, but they punish you for telling the truth, or and a lot of these media organizations are lying to you by omission.
Yes.
Right. And so I think that's an interesting point. I think it's an interesting
Yeah. Hulik in our chat says it's obfuscation.
Yeah,
And yes, I like I said, I'm not up on whether or not that actually would be considered a crime. In what court, in what state, I don't know. Now, that last week, the third installment of the Facebook files, which we didn't cover because it was late in the week, show that the Biden administration not only tried to censor people around the COVID vaccine, but also literally asked Facebook to change the algorithm to prioritize pro-vaccine information, specifically because people in the South are just too stupid to know the difference. Look at this. I can't believe anyone would write this. Viewers in Arkansas, do not think you're stupid. The federal government does. Here is this internal request saying, we followed up with this dude. Love that broken down by region and demographics, but equally important, how do we work with you all to push back on it? If someone in rural Arkansas sees something on Facebook, it's the truth. That is so condescending. I'm afraid to read it out loud lest someone thinks that I would say something so offensive.
And as a fellow Arkansan,
yeah, Clayton's
I'm
family is
offended.
from Arkansas.
My mom's side of the family from Arkansas.
Yeah, my
And
dad's family's from Arkansas also.
The lineage is strong in Arkansas, and I am offended.
Okay.
I'm offended in any put down of
like rural people as just being too stupid to know the difference.
Only New York City people, or or Washington D.C. people, or Boston or Harvard people, are educated. People in the backwoods of Arkansas clearly don't know.
Yeah. It's that someone should pay for having the balls to write something like this and believe that they are some kind of like uber educated elite who's above these people.
Yeah.
You should, feel so comfortable talking down to people who live in rural Arkansas. They even, again, went so far as to ask Facebook to change the algorithm to prioritize the media publications that were being good dogs and going along with the COVID narrative. Here are the ones that they say, like, hey, can we change the algorithm so people are more likely to see New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and any authoritative news source over the Daily Wire, Tammy Lahren, polarizing people? You wouldn't have a mechanism to check the material impact. Like, can we just not let those people be seen? Can we elevate the journalism that's doing our bidding?
It's hilarious. Again, I come back to what a former FBI agent told me about the New York Times. So we want to elevate the New York Times to be the thing that people see when they click into Facebook, right? The New York Times and Washington Post are the first news sources that the FBI, the deep state, goes to in order to leak a story because they're in bed with them.
Yeah. Now, why would Facebook go along with this, though? Journalist Michael Schellenberger says this is about basically a bribery, or it's because Facebook needed the Biden administration to go to bat for them against the European Union in data privacy laws. And here is internal communication that acknowledges that this is the corner that Facebook finds themselves backed into, saying, like, we should take stock after this Friday's meeting. We need to explain ourselves more fully. Like, we've seen that Facebook wasn't quite comfortable with doing everything the government asked, and they kept trying to sort of put the horse back in the barn, so to speak, and never were able. But you see this highlighted part saying, given the bigger fish we have to fry with the administration, we're not in a great place. Like, we don't have a high bargaining chip here because they've got us backed into a corner. So it's almost like bribery. The Biden administration is saying, if you want us in your corner over here, you got to play ball over here. We know you don't like it, but this is your priority and this is ours. And we have the better hand here in this poker deal. Now, last month, a federal judge ruled that the Biden administration and any government organization can no longer do this. They are not supposed to right now be working with any social media to censor anything right now. But the Justice Department is appealing that ruling, and we will see hearings begin, oral arguments, on Thursday in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. They have sort of indicated that they're willing to take this all the way to the Supreme Court in order to win back their rights to do more of this, what we're just talking about. There are organizations that have filed briefs in support of this ruling staying in place. One is the New Civil Liberties Alliance. So we should watch this very closely because I am in favor of a world where they can't do that and manipulate conversation. I would very much like to see this law upheld, and we should watch this very closely and wonder whether or not, if this goes all the way to the Supreme Court, it's big. It's bigger than bigger than anything.
I would love to see it go to the Supreme Court.
Why? I want it to die right here. I do not want that stress.
You don't want the stress?
No, it's dead. I want it to stay dead, and I want to see it enforced.
Yeah. See what part enforced?
There's a stay right now that in this, it's an injunction saying that the government cannot communicate with social media. You're not up on this one because you were on vacation when we covered this.
Oh, I'm up on it.
Okay.
I'm asking what part you want enforced.
Yeah, I like it.
Stay enforced.
I like the ruling, and I want it to stick around. I do not want to, bank on the Supreme Court. So.
Bank on the Supreme Court. Yeah, let us know your thoughts on that. Unbelievable. And it's just so disturbing to think that, these social media platforms, if you knew what was going on behind the scenes, this idea that they're playing politics and influencing our elections. And while they're sitting there telling us that Russia is influencing our elections, they're literally influencing our elections in the United States by doing what they're doing with social media.
Yes.
Like preventing us from seeing Hunter Biden's laptop story, preventing us from learning about the business dealings of his dad and Hunter Biden. Like, it was never about Hunter Biden. It was always about the big guy. But you kept that from us.
Well, we know that it was never Russian disinformation.
Right.
And that the media picked that up, again, like a good dog, and ran with it. And those things were not censored on social media. Like I said, the post we just showed you from Xavier Becerra, the Health and Human Services Health Secretary, who said get a COVID booster every 2 months, and then turns out had no scientific background for that. No one's punished for that on social media. You could argue that someone in that official capacity should not say anything that doesn't have scientific basis. I can see more a case for social media censorship in that instance than anything else that Facebook or the Biden administration wanted censored. But we only saw one side of the argument be censored, and that is a First Amendment violation, as the judge has ruled, and hopefully continues to stay in place.
Yes, all good points. A lot of good questions in the chat. A lot of good super chats. Thank you guys for that. Some breaking news out of Fresno. Thank you for that, independent free thinker, and what's going on there with the COVID virus found in Fresno. John Pierce writes, "Hey, why hasn't Redacted not been demonetized?" John Pierce wants to know why Redacted hasn't been demonetized. Actually, John, we've been demonetized many times. And also we've been banned and blocked by YouTube over 4 times. So we haven't been able to post for weeks and haven't been able to go live. And so we've been demonetized many times.
For saying things that we now can freely say.
About COVID. And,
we said that the vaccine does not prevent...
be careful.
Yeah. Things that have now been totally proven, we said. And
no apologies or anything from YouTube whatsoever. They're just like, nothing.
But hopefully you're, not wishing that on us, because we do we work really hard to play ball in the stadium that we find ourselves in right now.
Yeah. And we're on Rumble as well. Some other breaking news. People are very curious where your other button is on your shoulder. If you look right down.
Is it missing?
People people are like, where's your other button? Well, you can't see it because your hair's blocking it, but yeah.
I don't know. I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
But I guess this is sewn in, so it's
Do you have a backup button?
I might.
You have a backup button? You can slap another button on there. People are very curious about that.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Also, we should point out
if you could do that, we'll just sit here and wait while you take care of that.
Yeah, if you want to go get the sewing kit.
Find the button. I'll just remove one from here.
Yeah, remove one from the chest and place it up here.
Move it up. These buttons are hanging on for dear life. This is a really old dress, so... Anyway.
Also, Massachusetts just declared a state of emergency over illegal immigration in their state. even though Massachusetts they have sanctuary cities, right? So sanctuary cities in Massachusetts, isn't that a bit of an irony? As the U.S. has seen a record number of border crossings over this summer. So that is continuing to happen. The Biden administration continues to ignore that. Michael Yon is up next. He's going to be joining us in a report from the southern border on what exactly is happening there, as he and his whole team are going to be going on a very long journey from one end of the border to the other using a massive car that has about $500,000 worth of technical equipment in it for capturing night vision, heat signatures, all of this stuff. It's crazy. So we're going to check in with Michael at the start of this journey. But first, we want to tell you about our community. So we've got a community. If you go to redacted.inc and you want to support independent journalism, it's, for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support our show. Again, we're not supported by Pfizer or Moderna or George Soros or billionaires. We're supported by you. So if you come over to redacted.inc and click on you can join the Redacted Rebellion by clicking on that community button there. And again, for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support our show. You get access to exclusive content, videos before anyone else does, interviews before anyone else does, and exclusive interviews that no one else will see. Plus, we're launching Natalie's book club as the fall unfolds. So it'll be a live stream with book club inside the Redacted community. And plus we get a whole bunch of other things that we're playing as well. So if you're on Rumble, you can just click the join button right there. It makes it very easy on Rumble to click the locals button. If you're anywhere else, if you're on YouTube, just go to redacted.inc. Again, it's redacted.inc. Well, last week, Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas said our southern border is secure and they have a great plan in place. Watch.
Tell us what the situation is on the border now, because in May, there were fears that we were going to be overwhelmed. What is happening?
So we have dispelled those fears through a very thoughtful, comprehensive approach to irregular migration to our southern border.
Well, it appears nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, July saw a record number of border crossings. The same with June, a record number of border crossings. Now the threat of tuberculosis, among other diseases, hitting our livestock. Yes, diseases being carried across the southern border, something we've been worried about and covering here on this story, on this show for many, many months. And overnight new video captured showing fully armed cartel gunmen crossing the border wearing full tactical gear. Journalist Michael Yon is at the southern border. He's kicking off a weeks-long report with a specially outfitted truck that has all kinds of bells and whistles they'll be using to document these illegal border crossings. And Michael joins us tonight after a long night out at the border. His whole team tries to sleep during the day because they're spending the nights out at the border. Michael, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Clayton. Right. Everybody's asleep right now. We usually come in at about daybreak. And so they're crashed out. Otherwise, I would love to be on the border showing you this tracker truck, which is amazing. It's got a $500,000 thermal sensor on top, atop a 50-foot mast. And then we have drones and FAA pilots that have the licenses to fly the drones and amazing other equipment. And so we've been, last night I sent you some video from SpaceX. I happened to be on the border at Boca Chica. The Rio Grande dumps into the Gulf of Mexico right at SpaceX. And when we finished watching the border there, I had split our group into two teams last night. One was near Roma and one was near SpaceX. I was with the SpaceX team. On the way back, we got caught in a minor traffic jam as they moved the Starship. SpaceX was moving their massive rocket through the night. They had just done a test firing, and so we're moving it back to be refurbished. It was in front of us like 200 yards. It's unbelievable the things that you see out here. There last night you saw there was a high-speed chase. We didn't capture that on video. There was also the drawbridge system. It's called Drawbridge, Operation Drawbridge. The state of Texas has about 10,000 cameras out, mostly like trail cams. And so they have this giant monitoring center with massive amounts of monitors up where people just watch the monitors all over the border. And so they're catching a lot more armed. You saw the images I just sent you that were not published by us. Those were published. They were sent out by DPS, Department of Public Safety, from Texas. and they're catching a lot more people armed, and this is happening quite a lot. I mean, there's shootouts, there's high-speed chases. There was a high-speed chase near where I'm at right now last night. We didn't see that, but they dumped out near here. This is normal. This is day-to-day business here, Clayton. It's unbelievable.
So you're kicking off this weeks-long adventure, really, from one end of the border to the other, using this truck, this specially outfitted truck with $500,000 worth of equipment in it. And you set out, I guess, at nightfall. And we're seeing some of the images here of this truck, some of the night vision stuff. Can you explain how you're setting up, and what do you hope to capture as you're approaching the border with this specially outfitted truck?
Right. Actually, we're out for more than a month, at least 5 weeks at this point. We've been out for about 10 days now. And so first of all, we got a helicopter and mapped one of the colonias where these massive amounts of aliens are coming in north of Houston in Liberty County. So we did 4 helicopter flights and 2 airplane flights on the 30th of July, mapping that. And now we're going to go back and map it again in about 6 weeks. The progress of the construction there. This is a massive project for 200,000 people that the state of Texas is obviously facilitating. Now, after that, we went to SpaceX and watched the activity there. We were intercepting over scanners and that sort of thing. We were hearing cartel activity, talking about smuggling right on we were picking it up, right? And then we've also got the thermals. We've also got, it's very difficult to make comms out there often. So we use satellite radios, actually radios that go by satellite, not sat phones, but satellite radios. They were actually supplied by sat123.com. They're very expensive. They're very effective. And then we use very nice binoculars. These are incredible binoculars, which help us spot for these, which help us spot for the thermal. So it's more than the military guys out there know how we do this. It's kind of an in-depth process, but it's very interesting. And so we're catching a lot of fish, we call it. But last night, again, we broke into 2 teams. I went to SpaceX. Others were down near Roma and caught a lot of activity 2 nights, or let's see, 2 nights ago now. Part of our team caught 2 girls who appeared to be drugged, about 7 years old, got them on video. Antonio Aguero caught it. They often drug the children when they're bringing them over. And the men who were carrying the children clearly did not know the children's names or their birthdays. One of the guys in Spanish was just saying, look, it's on their paperwork. He didn't know anything about them. They do this all the time. They drug the children. If you shine the light in the children's eyes when their eyes are closed, no reaction. We got very bright lights, right? And if you shine a light, there's just no reaction whatsoever. And now this is right in front of Border Patrol. Border Patrol does nothing. Well, the next time we see this, we're just going to call 911 and put everybody on the spot. Like if Border Patrol is not going to do anything about it, if National Guard's not going to do anything about it, we're just going to call 911 and say, look, these girls are unresponsive. I mean, this is every night. Our government is sponsoring this stuff. It's not that the Border Patrol or National Guard wants this to happen. Some of the Border Patrol and National Guard are very angry. I mean, they've got children too. You should see some of the looks on their faces. They get quite angry. Others are just doing their job, sir. It's just like the things that we've studied since World War II, and you think, well, we would never do that. But I'm seeing it happen, right? There's some, just little gears, everybody's a little gear in the big clock, and loading up the aliens onto the buses with those children who are clearly unconscious, who clearly just came over the border, with adult males who clearly are not their fathers, and it just keeps right on rolling, Clayton.
And where are they taking these girls? I mean, we've been covering, of course, the human trafficking element, either being sold off for purposes of sex, being used as sex slaves, or what else, or organ harvesting. I mean, this is what's been happening. I know it's very hard for people to hear this, but it's well documented, and we've had members of the CIA on the show telling us this, laying out the organ harvesting, laying out the human trafficking piece of all of this. So where are these girls going?
Good question. Even I didn't realize, as much as time as I spend on borders in Colombia and Panama and Morocco and Lithuania, here, of course, I've been all across this border on the Mexican and the U.S. side. Even I didn't realize how massive the child trafficking was until the last couple of years. I'm not sure if it's grown or what, but it's like beyond imagination. I mean, you really have to come out to see it to believe it. And and you just see it in front of you constantly. You know, we put people on the spot. What's their names? What's their birthday? You know, they never know. And the children often are looking at the adults like when they're not drugged. You know, Antonio Aguero videotaped some children like that. It must have been 2 or 3 years ago when he published it, and he got basically banned from social media. You know, just because he published video of children that were clearly unresponsive. This is our government knows this is happening. They don't let us do DNA testing. Go ahead, sir.
No, I totally agree, and it's so infuriating. And I was just going to say that I think that's a great move for you to call 911, because then that puts the police on the spot. I mean, it's now you have a documented phone call to a 911 center, and then police would have to respond. You've got these 7-year-old girls who are unresponsive. These men are clearly not their dads. Can we save these girls from being sold off into human trafficking, sex slaves?
Right. And one of the things that the government does here, and including the Texas government, is, you know, we see that, you know, these reports in the news that the Texas government's fighting back against the U.S. government on, you know, to try to stop this trafficking, which is nonsense. I'm telling you, with the full authority of being here all the time, constantly on this border, that the Texas government is facilitating it just as much as the federal government. I mean, it's just clear as day. I'll take anybody out to see it. I just was on the phone this morning with the chief of staff of Congressman Tom Tiffany. I've taken him to Darien. I've taken him to the border here. I'm about to take him again on Operation Burning Edge is what we call this, Operation Burning Edge. You can find us on Twitter, and I'm going to take numerous congressmen down. At this point, congressmen are calling me up constantly, wanting to join us, and others as well. There's some very interesting people who have already joined us and more to come. So we're opening people's eyes to what's happening. Go ahead, sir.
I mean, yeah, I would love for people to be able to join you on this. And what you're doing is amazing, shining a light on this story. But it's sad. Isn't it so sad, Michael, that you as an independent journalist with these group of guys who have military experience, FAA experience, all of this, have to put together this group to do it? Congress should have full access to this. The Biden administration should be open and transparent about it, but they're lying about it. Secretary Mayorkas, who we just played his soundbite just a moment ago, saying the border is secure. We've got a plan in place. You don't need to worry about it. This is the official line from the Biden administration.
Yeah, Mayorkas. Let me tell you, in 2022, I was down in the Darien Gap in the jungle, and I got word that Mayorkas was heading to Panama, right? So I was about to head to Arizona, actually, with some congressmen to take them to the border in Arizona. But I got word that Mayorkas was about to go to Panama. So I skipped the trip to Arizona. I stayed in the jungle, and I predicted where he might land. I thought, well, if he's coming to Panama, he might come to this one area and land. And I waited there for 4 days. And on the 4th day, he landed right in front of me with 3 Black Hawks. After they were on the ground, I launched my drone. I filmed him going into one of the camps. So I've got all that footage. I've published it. And then the next year, which was this year, he did it again in April, and I was there again, right? And you can see the before and after photos, videos and photos. You can see that we are expanding those camps in Panama. We're expanding we're being invaded by numerous ecosystems of people. One is the Chinese Communist Party. They're everywhere now. And I'm talking military-age males, by nobody can count them all, at least 200 a day, just through the Darien Gap. Now, people who think they're smart will say Chinese would never do that because they can just come in on student visas. Hey, we all get it. This is our profession. We know what's happening, right? They're coming through the Darien Gap. They do come on student visas. They do come as scientists. They do come up on the beaches at Jupiter Beach in Florida after buying boats in places like Bahamas. They do fly to Cancun. I had a source down in Mexico City a few days ago looking at the Chinese. He said there's more Chinese than he's ever seen. They'll fly into Mexico City, fly into Cancun, come up to the southern border. I meet Chinese all the time coming across at Yuma or here in Texas. Meet them in Darien Gap all the time. We're being overwhelmed by Chinese. That's just Chinese. That doesn't include, for instance, large numbers of Iranians, many of whom actually have lived in Venezuela for many years or even were born there and speak Spanish completely fluently, natively. And so you can't tell them apart. So you've literally got, many of them are just, Iranians that are good people. And then there's others that are clearly like Hezbollah related. And they've been caught. I mean, some have actually been caught. So I'm not just saying this pie in the sky. You can just use web search and you can see some of it online.
Yeah, I definitely have. Absolutely. All it takes is, for the skeptics out there, just do your research on it. I mean, it's very easy. Well, it's not easy to find because Google loves to bury it and they want to suppress this story. They also want to suppress, Michael, the story about different diseases coming across the border. You just had a meeting with two veterinarians down there. I believe it was yesterday. I'm not sure. Maybe you're doing it today, actually, on the tuberculosis and other maladies that are affecting the cattle population. And so Texas cattle can say that they're TB free. Right? Just like you can say that something is organic, you can say these are tuberculosis-free animals. That might all go away, right? Can you talk about some of the maladies and diseases that they're having to deal with?
Yeah, this is a big deal. As a war correspondent, I study these sorts of things and have for many years. And so when I go to a group of people, I'm always looking for the veterinarians, right? And I was about 2 months ago, I was briefing a group of very influential Texans, and there were two veterinarians there. One was Dr. Michael Vickers, who just celebrated his 50th year of being a veterinarian, mostly in Texas and Mexico. Any of the big ranchers in Texas, they know who Dr. Michael Vickers is. So I communicate with Michael Vickers a lot. I asked him to come down and brief my team on Sunday. He came down and we were all together until late in the night. We rented a conference room at a hotel, and he talked about it. Dr. Michael Vickers. You should have this man on your show. He's the one who discovered the anthrax strain here in Texas in 1981, which mysteriously reappeared in the 9/11 era that killed people. He's actually an anthrax specialist, right? And so when you find these cattle bones out there or sick cattle, he goes and checks them out. And he's done this out in Mexico, and he does other big animal veterinary work as well. But so Dr. Michael Vickers, he actually is the one that discovered that strain in 1981. So that was the strain that was in people's letters and whatnot. Now he's also now tracking tuberculosis. I've asked him about screwworms and tuberculosis and all sorts of other things, encephalitis. He says tuberculosis is making a big comeback. It's a zoonotic disease, or some people call it zoonotic. Zoonotic disease is one that can go from humans to animals and animals to humans, animals to animals, and humans to humans, right? So these zoonotic diseases such as tuberculosis. We've got now MDR-TB, which I've been warning about for years, is coming here. It's now here, and it's been spreading from aliens who work on the dairy cattle to the dairy cattle. So they've had to start killing large numbers of the cattle in Texas, allegedly for tuberculosis or from tuberculosis. We never know if it's real or not. But now they're killing thousands of cattle. Texas, this is very important for anybody who owns cattle in Texas or the United States. These people coming across are giving the tuberculosis, reportedly by the inspectors, to the cattle, which are then being killed. So Texas could lose its tuberculosis-free certification, which would destroy the cattle industry in Texas, which is a big part of the industry here. Of course, this will only spread, right? Because this goes from cows to people and people to cows, and we have children getting it now. These aliens who are coming in, they're not tested for tuberculosis. The only thing that people check them for are things like lice, right? But most of the people coming through probably are not even seen, but we don't know that. Nobody knows how many are coming through. I sent you photos about an hour ago that were captured in the last day or so and that were released of probably coyotes, but they had rifles that looked like M16s. We catch them on our talking to each other about taking their peeps. Peep is like Spanish, it means little chicken, right? Taking, the coyotes are like the big cock rooster, and they're leading the peeps through, across the border, but they also carry drugs. So we're there with, people that can, translate this and know the lingo. And it's just getting worse and worse. Again, they're coming across at SpaceX. I've reported this numerously. Now, keep in mind, I'm very pro SpaceX. I've been pro space research since I was a little boy and watched Apollo 11 take off when I was 5. Right? I'm from Florida, right? But at the same time, the only reason I go to SpaceX so much is because it's on the border. It's right at the Mexican border. The Rio Grande dumps out near the launch pad. You have to go to see it to believe it. You can literally see the launch pad from the huge launch pad that they're going to, launch the biggest rocket. They've already tested it. Just test fired it again about 48 hours ago. You literally have to clean out that whole beach to do this, right? But they're crossing right there. Now, when I say this, I reported it numerous times. Yesterday, somebody who owns an RV park got very angry when he saw that we had reported that people were crossing around there. And I'm like, and he said it's not happening. It is absolutely 100% happening. I messaged back to him because I've got his number. We've stayed at his RV park before. I said, I will take you out today, meaning today, meaning like 5 hours from now. I'll take him back out and I'll show him. I'll show him the footprints from the people coming across. We'll go talk to the Border Patrol who say, I talked with the Border Patrol out there on the beaches and, at SpaceX constantly. Yeah, they're like, they cross right here. The other night, about 4 nights ago, with the Atraca vehicle, we captured on thermal. We captured 3 motorcycles and 2 4-wheel drives crossing the Rio Grande from the United States back to Mexico, right? So it's a flow that goes back and forth. It's not a one-way street. You got to keep in mind, smuggling has been going on this border since 150, 170 years. So it's a long time. And these networks are well established for every Texas city or New Mexico or California, there's Arizona, there's a complement city in Mexico, right? So it's always 2 cities, right? And so the smuggling has been going on since about the Cotton days, roughly, right? And so these like rancher families and whatnot, the techniques and the people, and it's so ingrained. It's like salt water, separating the salt from the water. It's not like those are the smugglers and then we're us guys. They're part of the community. I mean, they there's one high school near McAllen, not far from here, which is called they call themselves the Coyotes. That's their mascot for the high school.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back a long, long way. So this problem isn't new. This is not it's like suddenly this popped out of nowhere for the Biden administration to deal with. I mean, this is being swept under the rug. And it's fundamentally changing the United States. And you're seeing it happen right before our eyes. Michael, I'd love for you to come back on as this journey unfolds over the next 4 weeks. We'd love to have you back on and sort of check in what you're finding as you make your way across the United States with this truck and with your team. Can you do that for us?
Absolutely. I'm sorry I couldn't come on earlier, but as you can see, it's this, getting in at midnight, sunrise, and sometimes we just have comms problems. But this time I just dived into a hotel and got the internet so we can do it.
No problem. Well, anytime, Michael, and I know what you guys are dealing with there is absolutely crazy. So anytime you can join us here on Redacted, we would love to have you bring us this story, because no one else is covering this in this way, and we really, really appreciate it. Congress has to call you up just to get access so they can see what's going on. That's how crazy it is right now. Michael Yon from the southern border at the start of this journey, well, about a few days in now on the start of this journey, cataloging exactly what's happening there at the southern border. Michael, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Clayton.
So thanks so much, Michael. Great to have you here. And of course, this is so important, such an important story, and we're thrilled that we're able to give voice to great independent journalists like Michael Yon, who are at the southern border, bringing us the stories that no one else is covering. So thanks to Michael. And thanks to all of you for subscribing. It's totally free to subscribe. We know we say subscribe. It's totally free. You can do that right on YouTube and our Rumble channel as well. Just click follow or subscribe, whatever they call it on these different platforms. It's totally free. And please, if you would, be so kind to maybe smash that like button as well, because it really helps to push us further out into the algorithm and maybe bring some awareness to other people who've never seen our show before and who could be educated a little bit and could learn a thing or two with the stuff that we cover here. Thank you guys so much for being such a great audience, and we will be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great night, everyone.